Okay, hold on, redirecting. All right, give us a second. Let me just over here.
Alan, what was your opponent's? Is your opponent's name?
Scott Franklin.
Okay, good. All right, so we're in the green room, huh?
I don't know.
Good.
Check the audio.
Hey, we're checking audio, and I'm going to do the introduction.
Perfect.
All right, give us a second. All right, we're good, guys.
You ready?
We are ready. We're going. We're rolling.
Good morning, everyone, and welcome to the Green Room. Today, I'm so honored and so pleased to have a candidate for U.S. Congress District 15 in Florida. Many of you know him from this local area. He was an anchor for many years here, and we were so grateful to have him. We have Alan Cohn on this morning. So, Alan, I'm going to let you do your introduction. You can introduce yourself better than anyone. Let us know who you are and let us know what you're running for and some information about you.
Well, Ruta, thank you very much. And Barry, thank you so very much. And viewers of ABC7 will know that Ruta and Barry were frequent guests on my show on ABC7. You know, that show was really special to me. Actually, ABC7 started the 7 p.m. news for me because it really provided the station and the entire community with something that you rarely find these days, a network affiliated TV station taking an hour of time in prime time to not only just do the news, but also to dig deep into issues and talk about it. I mean, I was the managing editor as well as the anchor, and we had a team of reporters, and whether it was medical cannabis or any other issue involving interest, both locally on the Sun Coast or in Florida or the region or the country, we dug deep into it, and we would get people from both sides to come in and debate it. And it was often a lively debate. We never let it get over the top, and that's really what we as a community should be all about. And you know, we enjoyed it very much, and it really kind of capped a career of mine where for the last 30 years, I mostly worked as an investigative journalist. I love being a reporter. I love being a political reporter. But when I went into investigative journalism, I realized that I could have an impact in the community in a positive way, whether it was uncovering corruption and bringing those who are taking advantage of their public trust to justice. I did that. Or, I was, won the Peabody Award, the highest award you could win, for uncovering that one of the largest defense contractors in the United States was allowing defective parts to get into Black Hawk helicopters. And we stayed on that for 4 years until we were able to prove that aircraft were crashing. Oh, sometimes the stories, affected one person, like a Vietnam veteran.
Please tell that story, Alan, because I've heard it before from you personally, and it's an amazing story. And just so that you know, our audience, we have a lot of veterans just because we treat a lot of PTSD. So please tell the story because it's fantastic.
For sure. And Alan, people used to read the editorial pages on Sunday morning as well, right?
Right.
So it was that unique show that you had that was, and we need shows like that. We need that discussion, that deep dive.
I agree. Sometimes the stories that you do impact a lot of people. Sometimes it's just one. And years ago, I was working in Miami at a television station, and I was sent out to do your obligatory Veterans Day story at the local VA hospital. And the public information officer at the hospital had told me about a phenomenon in South Florida where there are Vietnam veterans who are living in the middle of the Everglades because they are so disabled by PTSD that they live in the middle of the Everglades because it kind of reminds them of Vietnam and Southeast Asia. Mm-hmm. And so my colleague and I went out and we started looking for people like that. And they not only live in the Everglades, but they lived off of the coast in small boats so they could patrol their perimeter. And I found a man who was eating out of trash cans outside of Miami City Hall. And if you just looked at him, you would go, whoa. but I talked to him, and I wound up doing this feature on him. He took me out to his boat. And at the end of the story, I said to him, is there anything I could do? And he said, can you find someone I served with? Because the VA has for 30 years turned down my service connection for PTSD because on paper I was just a ditch digger. But we were constantly attacked by the Viet Cong. And the only name he had was his former lieutenant. And the only thing he remembered about his lieutenant was that he was a West Point grad. So I contacted West Point, and they were able actually to trace down this lieutenant who became a very successful Connecticut businessman. And I contacted him and I flew him down to Florida. And they met for the first time in all those years. The former lieutenant brought a binder of where they were in Vietnam and photographs and pictures where they were in combat. And the lieutenant wrote me an affidavit saying that he was retired Army captain, so-and-so. This man was one of my men. We were in combat here. And I took it to Washington. I got a little help from Bob Graham, the former senator. And I confronted the VA, who at first said, you know what, anybody could claim service connection that they were in combat, but, how are we to know that their PTSD is connected to their combat in Vietnam? And, but, with the affidavit and a little pressure from Bob Graham, we reversed a 30-year decision. By the VA.
Alan, that's a great story.
Right.
The care of the PTSD veteran is such an honor for me. I'm 64, so I go back to the Vietnam era. I grew up in Akron, Ohio, which was 20 miles from Kent State, 69. And I want to bring the conversation around a little bit to what's so pertinent in the country today, because, those of us that operate in the medical cannabis space with honor and integrity, trying to change perceptions every day, the government had a 120-year head start on us to the extent of their narrative. But what we know is that, Richard Nixon in 71, literally, when he tore up the Schaefer Commission, Haldeman's actually testified to this. He stated that he needed a drug war against blacks, Hispanics, and hippies, at the time. And instead of keeping cannabis off the schedule, which is what the Schaefer Commission actually recommended, it was placed as Schedule 1, right? Which means that there's no medical value or need for further research, right? Which has been so offensive. So as a doctor, I get offended by the lack of research. But as a citizen, and we see it even today with what's going on with social injustice and unrest, of course, racially as well, that cannabis has been a huge part of that, right? So as we go forward with reforms, we talk about expungements and we talk about reversing a lot of the past. And I'd be interested in your impression on that, because obviously you've been existing in the same world as I over the number of years. We won't ask you your age, though.
Well, the issue involving medical cannabis to some degree over the last decade or so has become, on one hand, a nonpartisan issue. Because, if you're suffering from whether it's PTSD or or cancer or any kind of illness that can be helped by the use of medical cannabis, you're a Democrat, you're a Republican, or you're a no party affiliation at all. There are people who need this kind of relief, and they would rather look towards medical cannabis than some of the other drugs which we're dealing with in terms of the drug problem that we have in this country. And what really is important to remember is that, we could talk all we want about what the state law is and what other states are doing. But when it comes to federal law, as you mentioned, it is still a Schedule I drug. And there is a distinct difference between the way that the current administration has handled things as opposed to the prior administration. And, you could be a Trump fan or an Obama fan, but here's the reality, that under the Obama administration, the Justice Department was saying that we are not going to prioritize prosecutions under Schedule I. And that it did open the door, perhaps for medical research. When Trump came into office and Jeff Sessions became Attorney General, they reversed the decisions that the Obama administration has made. So it doesn't matter what Florida law is at this point. If the federal government wanted to crack down, it would. And the only way to deal with things like this is to codify it into federal law, which the Congress has not done. And that brings us about to why these congressional seats, like the one I'm running for, matter.
They do.
The current occupant of this congressional office would be a vote for no. He lost in the primary.
Well, congratulations on that. I think Ross Spano leaving Congress is a plus for everyone. And just to interrupt just for a quick second, I do want, in all fairness, because we are the green room, we did invite your opponent, Scott Franklin, on. We never heard word back. We sent him emails and left him a voicemail. So just in fairness, just for those watching, we're a non-biased show.
That's why it's the green room.
Yeah, it is the green room. So we just, so that you know, we did invite him. So your current opponent, Scott Franklin, do you have any, I'm sure you have some idea of where he stands on whether it's legalizing marijuana in Schedule 1. What's his stance? Do you know?
Well, you know, I don't know what his stance is because he has not put that out as of yet. But I suspect it wouldn't be much different than the stance of Ross Spano.
Well, you know, there's not a platform, of course, at the Republican convention this year. So we really don't know what their plank may be. You know, Alan, as you know, these are banking issues, of course, right? And things, you know, come through the congressional system in various ways. There's veterans access issues and, you know, who can, who can't. But yes, I mean, the removal of federal Schedule 1 designation is the key. And very importantly so, and I know you and I have had this conversation, I want to give a big shout out to you, Alan, also for inviting me early on when I opened up my clinic back in 2017 to the Sarasota 7, you know, 7 to 7, and, you know, the trapezoid as it was, correct?
Right.
Right now. But, you know, it allowed me a platform that was important. It allowed me to spread the word, and I was so appreciative of that. But the point is that this is an evolving circumstance right now. My point is that you and I have discussed it. It's the descheduling of cannabis that actually would be the most favorable to the medical cannabis world, because that allows both for research, right, and allows the states to pretty much make their own determinations. If we go into Schedule 2 or 3, I'm very fearful that Big Pharma will once again take away the whole plant entourage product, which is another green room. But my point is, I know you know these issues, and that's why I'm so appreciative of your candidacy.
No, I appreciate that, Barry. And, you know, I remember, and I don't know if you recall, this elderly couple, I believe they lived in Brandon, and the wife had a debilitating illness, and the husband was growing, you know, cannabis in his backyard because that was the only way to help his wife.
That would be Bob Jordan, and Kathy is still alive with ALS, probably after 36 or 37 years now at this point, Alan, believe it or not, remains a huge cannabis advocate.
Right, and so it shouldn't have to be the way that it was when we first started talking about this. But my essential point is, whether it's involving removing medical marijuana from Schedule 1, or the research that is sorely needed.
Access, Alan. I think the other thing is access, because one of the things we overwhelmingly hear is access, especially for veterans. Yeah. And even for veterans, so many come in here and they're so upset because they are on the opioids and it's debilitating. They're sitting on couches, they're saying they're non-functioning. And so for them, it's so expensive to get on medical cannabis, and it's so difficult, and you hear it repetitively. I met with Sarasota Veterans Association, and there was a group of men there, and they were saying, they're like, you need to help us, and it's access for vets, and I think you know, you'd have huge veteran support, you know, bringing this forward.
Right, but the essential point that you make there is that there are a whole series of new laws that have to be put into effect. And what I try to get across to people, whether it's this issue or others who are cynical about politics and politicians, understandably, my goodness, is that it does matter. It does matter in terms of whether it's your health insurance or the economy or the issue of medical marijuana.
Let's go there for a second too, Alan, after this. If we can go, I'd really like to hear your stance on healthcare access for the American people.
Sure. Yeah, absolutely. My point being is that, people have every right, especially consider, our local politics and what we've seen from Congress, to be totally turned off. But what I tell people is you cannot give up, because whether it's the issue of medical cannabis or healthcare or anything else, this directly impacts your life. And it impacts our economy. And, we're trying to work for, an economy that works for hardworking families and middle class families. And I essentially, I don't think all the breaks in the world should go to the top, 1%. And so who you vote for, whether it's that or the issue of medical cannabis, matters. There's can't be a reflexive way of voting. You have to look at what the issues are, and if it comes to medical cannabis, the vote, if you want, medical cannabis taken off of Schedule 1, if you want research, if you want to make it more affordable, you have to, seat by seat in Florida and elsewhere, change a no vote to the yes vote. And so we could rile all we want against Congress and politicians, but I'm asking people to vote for their own self-interest, because too often
it's too often that they don't. They look at a national viewpoint, or actually not even a national viewpoint. They actually just go with the party. Many times they're in support, and yet if you talk to them on a local one-on-one issue like medical cannabis, if you talk to an individual, most of them are pro-cannabis. Florida overwhelmingly voted for it, and yet they may vote against their best interest. So it's such an important issue. I'm just going to open it up. We have a great opportunity. You have a great opportunity to ask Alan Cohn any question you want. So please, if you have any questions, we're watching the live feed, so just text your question. We'll be more than happy, and I'm sure Alan's open to answering any questions you may have about his candidacy, the campaign, his campaign stance. And I just want to move away from medical cannabis for a second and actually go to healthcare, because one of the things I did run for a House seat a couple of years ago, and one of the things that is near and dear to me is healthcare access for everyone. Can you give us a little bit of?
Well, it's called just go to the ER, Ruta. Come on,
Yeah.
I mean, listen, healthcare access is so interesting, Alan. As you know, I come out of 32 years in the emergency medicine business. The greatest thing about what I did is that I never checked anybody's insurance card. It's kind of the beauty and the joy, but people can't use the ER for their primary health care. We know that.
But they do, because they don't have access otherwise. So I really, like I said, it's, I wanted to hear your take, and what kind of plan would you have for our country going forward with healthcare access?
When I talk about this, I start in a way that many people who are running for office or in Congress don't start with. And that is, you start from your own personal perspective. And for most of my career, I've worked for large corporations where I have gotten health insurance through my company. But what we started to see, and over the years, is that even if you have health insurance, most plans these days come with a $4,000 to $6,000 deductible.
Easily.
And essentially makes it unaffordable for middle class families and working families, because you have to spend $4,000 to $6,000 before your plan will kick in 80% of
80%. You're still over 20.
And in practical basis, which every man and woman who is watching this right now will understand, is if you get sick, or if your kid gets sick and have to go see a doctor, that's a $300 or $400 bite out of your monthly budget. So there are people saying, I'm not going to go to the doctor. I'm going to think twice about taking my kid to the doctor, because because it's going to blow the monthly budget. We have to do something about these huge deductibles. I mean, the passage of the Affordable Care Act provided health care to millions more Americans that did not have it. It was a start. There are things in it that need to be fixed and improved, but frankly,
Are you suggesting then moving more off of the Obama Care or Affordable Care Act? Or are you looking for giving some kind of benefit to everyone as a start, perhaps?
I think that we number one, we have to fix the Affordable Care Act. We have to consider a public option. But it's what we've learned is it's going to take more than just Democrats to do that. And frankly, and I'm speaking to Mr. Franklin right now, who I'm running against. What's your plan? I mean, we have been waiting for.
To answer that, I would love to hear his view on
We
that.
have been waiting since when was the Affordable Care Act passed? In 2010, 11? We've been waiting all that time for the Republican plan. And we're still waiting.
Supposed to be one, yeah.
Right. And aside from just obligatory comments that pre-existing conditions should be covered and prescription drug prices are bad, that's all we get. And so if you want to be critical of the Affordable Care Act, that's well and fine. What's your plan?
As a doctor in the room, I've always been fascinated by the profit level at the insurance company level of things, right? To me, a socialized, quote unquote, medical system, one payer, Canada, England, things of that nature is somewhat scary because it's difficult to think of a government bureaucracy controlling anything in the appropriate manner. But I've always been fascinated by how the insurance companies and insurance company executive salaries and things of that nature can be factored into healthcare. In my personal, humble ER doctor, 32-year opinion, there should be no profit level in that insurance company level of things, right? They administer a program. They are supposed to be there for their patients' benefit, right?
Yeah, they're there for their shareholders.
Well, they are.
I worked for Aetna for 12 years as a contractor, doing contracting for hospitals and large physician groups. And one of my goals was to actually make sure that we were always making a profit. So on the Aetna side, so this is why it's so near and dear to me, because I think you were talking about the scariness of a one-payer system, and I am very much in favor of a one-payer system. And I think this country needs to start moving away from the mentality of supporting these large insurance companies that are actually.
Yeah, you and I haven't even talked about this before.
I know, but it's a huge passion of mine because, like I said, I was in that healthcare industry.
None of that will ever be done.
No, I know.
Because you have to look at politics and who is funding these campaigns for office.
Absolutely.
And if you're taking money in terms of campaign cash from the insurance companies or big pharma, are you really going to vote against their interest in the Congress? I mean, I've taken the no corporate PAC money pledge, which means that
I did that as well.
I have to spend hours a day calling people, whereas there are other candidates for office who are just getting those checks from the large insurance companies and big pharma to fund their campaign.
Special interest rules the roost.
Right. You are who you take your money from. Exactly. And so until we change that, we're not going to change the dynamic in the Congress to change healthcare in a way that will actually help Americans and get past these huge.
Alan, on that note, quickly, and we'll go over this at the end, how can people get involved in your campaign, donate, give time? Is there a place, a website, something that they can go to?
Sure. The best place to start is our website, which is www.alan, Cohn, Cohn, forcongress.com. And
please donate, because as you want to support candidates who aren't backed by big money, by all these special interest groups.
No, listen, I read an article. Alan, if things happen in the national election for president in a certain way and things trickle down about 8 levels, isn't your one singular congressional seat possible to the extent of determining the outcome of the entire election?
Right. There was an article in Newsweek this past
week,
which was absolutely incredible, saying that, look, we're seeing crazy stuff with the Postal Service and vote by mail. And there's a scenario that if the election is disputed and it gets into the Congress, the way that the House decides it is by states and whether states have a majority of
Yes.
Democrats or Republicans. Right now, Florida has the Republicans have a 1-seat majority. If I win this seat, which is now an open seat, it flips the majority.
I know.
That would be a
I said that
phenomenal-
when I was reading it. I said, "Oh my, this is incredible!" Talk about a hanging chad, you know, or something that could be so razor thin. And that's why, listen, when Ruta said, let's really focus in these next number of days on the candidates.
We have to.
Let's make sure that we, and listen, people vote, okay? We have, you know, Alan on today. We invited his opponent. We're going to continue to focus on the message of be active. Read that Sunday morning editorial page, everybody. Where does that come these days? Where can you? I know it's so hard to know. In the old days, Alan, you opened up your local paper and you went to the Sunday, editorial page, and you could fairly much believe what it was that you were reading. And I think, and not to get overly, political against President Trump, but I think the one thing that he has done from day one, unfortunately, is diminish what the value of truth is. And listen, you and I think the reason we bonded early is because a lot of people that know me well know that my background is also communications and journalism. My dad just wouldn't let me go to Poughkeepsie to work for $16,000 a year after putting me through Ohio State. But my point is that we need our journalists. We need our truth. And that, I think, has been the most difficult thing with the pandemic, with COVID.
Speaking of I have to interrupt because we do have a viewer question. Alan, we have a question from Patty, and she's asking, can you please tell us, and this is about the COVID issue, she wanted to know your stance on what you would do in light of COVID-19, what your stance is on masking, immunizations, reopening schools. So if you could address that, please, for Patty.
Well, number one, what I tell people in terms of masks and mask ordinances, whether they're local or on the federal level, folks, it's a patriotic issue. This is, we have pride and value our right, our freedoms in this country, and we have a great deal of freedoms. But that does not extend to risking other people and the health and safety of other people. And I will note that my opponent, Mr. Franklin, voted against a mandatory mask ordinance in Lakeland. And you know what people don't like is chaos. And for the last 4 to 6 months, we have been in nothing but chaos. We all want, we crave to get back to our lives, and whatever your political affiliation is, in making this country a better place. And we can't do that while we're still embroiled in the chaos of COVID and people losing their jobs and our hospitals being overwhelmed. And we all have people who have fallen ill or unfortunately have passed away because of this pandemic. So as I said, not wearing a mask is not an expression of your personal freedom. It's an expression of your patriotism or lack thereof. And look, I am hoping and I'm praying for immunizations, and when that comes, my family and I are going to be immunized. We have veered too far off by too many people in this country that we don't believe in science. Science has gotten this nation and this world to where it is today. And I think that, it begins, our world and our normalcy in this country begins with believing facts and science. So I hope that answers that question.
Well, science should not be politicized, and unfortunately that's what's happened. Even the hydroxychloroquine discussion. Listen, doctors have used off-label medicines for years. In fact, cannabis in every way, shape, and form is an off-label medicine right now because it's actually Schedule 1. So I've never gotten in the way of anybody that wanted to write hydroxychloroquine for their patient. I mean, it's no different than off-label use of other medicines. But it never should have been politicized. It never should have been brought into the public forum in a way that it was. And believe me, research is needed. But when you're in a crisis situation and people are, making decisions on a day-to-day life and, death, in their minds, sometimes very uneducated decisions, then bad things can happen. But you should never politicize science.
Alan, we have a question again from another viewer. They are asking, do you believe in mandatory immunizations for people?
I don't know how to answer that question. I know that we immunized our children. I don't believe in the anti-vaxxer way of thinking.
It's interesting. In the old days, you couldn't get into school, of course, until you were vaccinated, right?
Right.
And through the years, as an emergency physician, what I noticed was that as homeschooling increased, then the rate of unvaccinated kids also increased, right? So as we were growing up, it was just a given and understood. We were, but of course there's anti-vaxxers, people that believe in the autism link, things of that nature. And once again, science shows not. But we're just in a very interesting society, and mandatory anything is a difficult thing.
Actually, I'd like to swing that over a little bit because we only have 10 minutes left. And we have so many topics to discuss with you, Alan, speaking about mandatory and freedoms. I want to address a couple issues with you that I know our viewers have because I have these wanting answers. Your stances on women's rights and women's right to choose. Obviously, it's a freedom for women, as well as pay scales not being equal to women. And the other one is your stance on LGBTQ issues. I'd like to hear a little bit about those as well.
Right. Well, let me start with women's issues and I am pro-choice. I think that no one should be making decisions for women in terms of their health care except for women. I've been incredibly strong on that. Look, I was born in and raised by a strong woman, and I married a strong woman. When it goes to equal pay, women should be able to earn what men earn, and everyone should be able to earn enough money to make the right decisions for their families. And that goes.
Would you try to be pushing legislation to make sure it's in law that women actually
Absolutely
equal pay? That would be great.
Absolutely.
I know. Again, working in the Aetna space, that men were working under me, and yet they were earning more than me. So, and equal education being put on the same table.
Right, and absolutely. And the thing what I say about LGBT rights is, I came out and my wife, came out for, marriage equality long before it was cool to do so. And I think that's really important to remember that years ago, it was, you ask a Democrat about this and you weren't guaranteed getting a straight answer. And the way I was brought up is that we are all equal under the law.
Absolutely.
And
they're human rights.
Exactly.
It's human rights. It's not even an issue. I have a question though about legislation on that, because you see constantly now more and more states are moving towards like an independent view on LGBT rights, giving autonomy to many states, many cities. Would you try to be pushing something on a federal level to make sure that all states are on board with this? Because it's frightening to hear other states all of a sudden saying, well, we might reverse this, we might reverse that on LGBT rights.
Right. Yeah, absolutely. I think that the Supreme Court was clear on this, and I think the Congress needs to be clear on this, that personal freedoms and equality cannot differ from state to state.
And it's just what kind of America that you look at. I mean, to me, I think that basically points out where the divide is in America these days. I look at an America in the future as an America that is changing colors as we go forth, because the immigration into the country is not coming just from Europe. It's coming from all over the world. I look at the rights of everybody to choose who it is that they want to spend their life with and commit to. It's amazing to me that anybody would want to go backwards when we've made the advancements that we have. That's why I think this is such a critical election. Because there are those that want to go backwards, and I just can't understand that in this society.
Right. And I have often said this is a matter that there are people who want to turn the clock back. But we're talking about progress here, moving forward and not moving backwards. I mean, we all have the right to believe what we want to believe, and no matter what our religion are and what our personal values are, but what we don't have a right to put those values onto other people when it comes to civil rights and civil liberties and religious freedom. We don't have a constitutional right to discriminate, and the fact is, if you value that, it matters who you vote for. It matters what kind of Congress that you have.
One of the other, obviously, big topics of the day is racism. And I want to hear, what would you do if elected to Congress? What kind of legislation would you bring forward to stop this madness of the racism, systemic racism in this country? I want to hear your take on what's going on. What would you try to do differently? How would you try to stop this overboiling right now of emotions on both sides? I just want to hear your plan.
Well, the first thing to remember is that we're not at a moment in time. This has been going on for hundreds of years in our country, where African Americans have been the victims of this kind of violence. And I heard one person say that, quoting Jesus saying that, "Why are you going after one sheep who has wandered off? Because that sheep needs the help at the moment." And that's a fine story, except for, this is not a new thing. I have a newspaper article to my right over here, a story that I wrote for the Boston Globe years ago in the late 1990s of a brutal police beating and cover-up outside of Boston. And these officers end up being charged with the use of excessive force in federal court. What we are is long past due in terms of dealing with some of the issues that allow this to continue to happen. The Obama administration directed the Justice Department to go into police departments and start programs for retraining officers how to de-escalate incidents, not escalate them, to get rid of the arming of police officers with tanks and weapons that you would see on a battlefield, but should not be part of our local communities. I think that police departments should be more reflective of our communities.
And on that topic, I'm sure your opponent's going to come after you because obviously you have a D behind your campaign. Defunding the police or reallocation of funds. Where do you see that?
I am not for defunding the police. I mean, that's ridiculous. Yeah. We need our police. We honor our police, and they do put their lives on their line. They are responding to 911 calls and going into situations that they do not know what is happening. But at the same time, we're asking our police to do too much with too little.
And there's too many guns, and there's too many guns out there, Alan, of course, and it's always, goes back to gun control issues. I know that is something that can be addressed at the federal level, of course. And hey, listen, people have asked me why so much Black lives matter? Why not every life matter? I'm a doctor. I should care about every life. You know what? I do care about every life. But the Blacks in this country have been subjected to 401 years of the original stain of how things started in the country. And it's time to unravel that. It just is. I'm 64 years old. I don't want to go through the last third of my life with us still not addressing that injustice. Right. There should never have been a difference based on the color of anybody's skin. It's just.
I think we all know Michael Che, who does Weekend Update on Saturday Night Live. He did a great routine recently about the term Black Lives Matter. Why is that controversial? Do Black lives not matter? We're not saying that Black lives matter more, but we're not saying Black lives matter less. It's not a controversial term. but it has become politicized, and we have to get past that.
For sure. And on the training side, hang on. When you carry a gun as an officer, you're obligated. You're obligated to de-escalate. You're obligated to be a peace officer. And I really think that's where things have gotten out. You know, is that when you have a gun, you should be specially trained. I love the training that they have in Europe, for example, for their police officers. What, a couple of years of 2 or 3 years of police college, so to speak. So I think it's the training. And you hit upon it, Alan. It's a de-escalation philosophy. And when you have a gun, you're obligated to do everything that you can not to ever use that gun. Enough. That's ER doctor in me.
We have probably time for one more subject, because obviously you're going to get attacked on this constantly as well. All Democrats are socialists. So, and we're moving towards a socialist government, according to the Republicans. So I want you to go ahead and confront that, because I know your opponent will be coming after you.
Yeah, that's pretty weak. And if anybody ever said that to me, you're saying it to a guy who saved how many lives of U.S. military personnel by making sure that their Black Hawk helicopters were safe to fly in. So I think that's a pretty weak statement, and it's a sign of a weak campaign to try to throw that around. And it is part of the chaos that we have seen for the last 4 years. People are not, it's be political for 1 second, for one moment. You're talking about throwing around, the word socialist, by people who back a president who has opened the door for Russia. You're talking about socialists when we're talking about a president who has not gone after the Russians for putting bounties on the head of U.S. military personnel in Afghanistan. So you want to talk about socialism? Well, not only come at it with me, but also give back your grandmother's Social Security check.
Absolutely.
To me, it's a complete dumbing down of the process when you just try to use one word to label semantically. And once again, that's why we love these type of forums, Alan, where we can actually dive in a little bit and hear your views. Thank you so much for coming on with us.
Pleasure.
Alan, I want to give you, obviously, I ran for office, and I know time is precious when you have some airtime. Tell us a little bit about yourself as an ending, what you want people to take away about you, your campaign. Obviously, at the end, we want people, please, if you're tuning in, donate to his campaign. Whether if you live in your territory, why don't you talk about your district? Because I know you're a lot of Hillsborough County, but please elaborate on all of that and tell us how we can help you out.
The 15th congressional district is 3 counties: Hillsborough, Polk, and South Lake County, and it's a wonderful area. What I tell people often is, for the last decade, you've been able to find me and my wife on ball fields from Brandon to Dover to Plant City to Lakeland to Claremont every weekend, because we have a son who plays a baseball. We've been part of the fabric of this community a long time. And look, when it gets down to it, I'm a middle-class guy. My wife and I have raised 2 kids in the public schools, and we've ridden the ups and downs of this economy. And we know that it's just not working for folks like us and hardworking Americans. And I am running because I want to do my part to build an economy that lifts all boats, and where people who work hard can feed their families, send them to school, and maybe save a little for retirement. And I think that whether you're a Democrat or a Republican or independent, you get exactly what I'm saying.
Yeah, absolutely. And please tell us again how we can donate to your campaign, help out. I know if somebody's in the listening area and you loved Alan when he was on ABC7, you can host a dinner party, or host not even a dinner party, just host.
Well, it's COVID time. Who knows? I know
Alan,
what do you need time to be running, obviously, because you can't run the traditional type of campaign where you go and have rallies and things, right?
Right. And this technology is wonderful, and it has allowed us to, what I've said, at the beginning of the pandemic, is that we cannot be there personally together, but I don't want anybody to ever be under the impression that they're alone. And we have done an incredible amount of these Zoom meetings, and The technology is wonderful. We encourage people to go to our website at AlanCohnForCongress.com. If you would like to have a house party, it's really important to
Host a Zoom party.
party. The eyes of the nation are going to be on this race. It's an open seat on the I-4 corridor of Florida. It's one of the top targeted seats in the country. And many people outside our area don't realize that there's a competitive congressional campaign right here in Central Florida. And it's exciting and it's really important.
Well, we're so grateful for having you on. Thank you so much. We wish you the best. We hope you sweep your district and you represent us well in Washington. I think you will. So for me, thank you so much for coming on. And again, I wish you the best of success.
Same, and we'll look for you on the campaign trail. And anything we can reach out and assist in medical cannabis discussion. My specific area, of course. I'll always here for you.
Right.
And we'll be posting your website up on our Facebook page and on YouTube and on Twitter and Instagram. So please look for that if you have any follow-ups, or if you want to rewatch the tape, we'll be having tapes feeding on those as well. So you can go back and re-listen to Alan's stance. Thank you everyone for tuning in. Alan, thank you again and best of luck.
Okay. Thank